Welcome to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be back with today's guest, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors that make it all possible. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We want to thank Violet Defense for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement some of their existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense, and go to violetdefense.com for more information. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year while creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com to get started. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. You need to check out these products. They are very versatile, and you will be amazed at what they can do for you. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, visit vitalsignswalloffame.com. Or to learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute, call them at 614-981-3589 or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. We also want to thank Huddle for their support. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. More than 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their teams and their athletes play better. Huddle is the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high schools and colleges, and even professional teams use Huddle to help their athletes play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the players and parents who really love your program, and it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out on some important information. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to Ohio today, and we're going to visit with Scott Visy. Scott is a registered athletic administrator, and he's the athletic director at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. Okay, Delaware, Ohio, as opposed to Delaware, Delaware. Scott's got a really impressive background, working at the college level, and he runs all the programs at Delaware Christian. We're going to meet him in a second, but Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Well, as you and I were talking, we've had this scheduled for a while, so I'm excited to hear what's going on in your corner of the country. And as you know, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how your path has led you to Delaware Christian School.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maryland. I've been a little bit all over the country at some point, but grew up in Maryland, and I went to a small Christian private school from kindergarten to 12th. So I was there my whole time. And that's really where I had the opportunity to play a lot of different sports. Small school, so many sports didn't have tryouts. If you showed up, you were essentially on the team. So starting in middle school and throughout high school, I played a lot of sports, but basketball was my main sport. Played a little bit of baseball, golf, but did basketball all through. I mean, as little as I can remember, I was dribbling a basketball and playing in the summer, those kind of things too. But when I wasn't in season, so I didn't play a fall sport. So there were years that I was the volleyball manager at my school, or did student MC. So I would call the games, ran our school's athletic social media pages. I would cut and edit highlight reels from each game. So it's kind of funny looking in hindsight. At the time, if you asked me, I wouldn't have said that I would have ever worked in athletics. But looking in hindsight, I was doing little AD jobs here and there as a student. And so, being at a small school really set me up for success and having the opportunities and the responsibilities to practice such things. So when I graduated from there, I ended up choosing to go to Baylor University down in Waco, Texas. And at the time, I was wanting to maybe go into broadcasting, something of the sort. And so I studied journalism when I was there. And I mainly chose Baylor. A lot of the reason why, honestly, was because of athletic reasons. They were on the upswing. This is right around the time of RG3. They had just made their second Elite Eight in basketball. The whole department was doing well. Women's basketball was continually 1 or 2 in the nation. So I just thought, hey, this is still a small enough school to where I can have opportunities to get into the athletic program, but also a very now well done athletic department to where I can get some good coverage. So went in there, started studying journalism. And when I was there, I had a mix of internships, not only with Baylor athletics, but with the Northern Texas PGA during the summer. So trying to get involvement in sports when I could. But I thought I wanted to go more the sports marketing route after a little while of school, realized that broadcasting just wasn't for me. So I thought, okay, let's do marketing. And so out of school, I was able to get a job at a large advertising agency. And at the time, there wasn't too much going on in sports. So I was on an account with a bank. And I didn't even make it a year doing that. I just really didn't like it, in all honesty. And so I kind of did some self-evaluation, talking with mentors, and they kind of realized, hey, when you were doing marketing all along, maybe it wasn't the marketing that you were loving. Maybe it was the sports. And so I thought about that. And at that time, my wife was already planning to go back to grad school. And so I thought, you know what if I did the same? And I could study sport management. I know a bunch of people in athletics at Baylor, so they got me kind of plugged back in. So I went back to school to get my master's degree in sport management at Baylor. And this was after a year of doing some side coaching and some side sales jobs, so I got a bunch of different experience that I still use now, which I can talk about later. But when I was back in school, it was a 2-year program. And so the first year, I was really trying to get involved with Baylor athletics, but at the time it was just really hard. And so I ended up working with McLennan Community College and their athletic department. And that was a great experience. And this was about 2019. And so kind of the end of that first year, I had made some contacts with Baylor basketball, men's basketball, and I was lining up to be one of their graduate assistants. I thought maybe coaching would be kind of on my alley. And so I started pursuing those relationships and contacts that I had in the basketball department. And I had a lot of stuff lined up to work for them for my second year. But then when COVID happened, everything just got thrown into a whirlwind and all of that kind of fell apart. They had a lot of people return. And so there wasn't a spot for me. So then it was kind of back to the drawing board of, okay, what am I going to do my second year? What am I passionate about? And so I spent those last few months as in my first year. And I kind of realized, when I was coaching basketball after I graduated, I loved working with kids. It was the middle school age. And so, man, I was just passionate about that. And kind of my mentors helped me find that in me. And so I went to the local high school that I lived just a block away from in Waco. It was called Midway High School, very big 6A school down there. And I kind of just knocked on the AD's door one day and said, hey, we came last year toward your facility in one of my classes. And, I love what you do here. And I'd just be interested to see what it's like to be a high school AD. Would you mind kind of taking me on this year as a graduate assistant? And, this was right in that summer when COVID first was coming into the schools and everyone was planning how to come back. So I remember he sat me down. He said, sure, I'll take you on, but I'm going to warn you now, it might be a very boring school year if everything gets shut down. But on the flip, it could be a very exciting school year and you can learn a lot. And it ended up being that. And so, I worked there my second year and just day after day, I loved it more and more and more. And it was just a great opportunity. And that kind of every day just kind of revalidated that I was supposed to do this. And so that's when I started applying for more jobs in athletic administration. And coming out of school, I wasn't expecting to be an AD. I was mainly applying to assistant AD jobs or teaching and coaching jobs and maybe working my way up. And then there was one day where I saw a small private school in Ohio, was looking for an AD, and it seemed very similar to the school that I grew up in. So I asked my wife, hey, would you mind, if I apply to this? I know you want to stay in Texas or at least in the South, but it seems like I'm kind of qualified for what they're asking for. And she said, sure, who knows where it'll go. And next thing you know, they were interviewing me. They flew me up here, interviewed me in person, wanted me. And so that was just kind of the funny way of opening the door straight out of college and out of my master's degree to become a high school AD right in the first year. So that's how I got where I am now.
Well, really appreciate you sharing the story because it illustrates, how individual experiences can add up and have a collective impact, on that resume and make you an appealing hire to, a particular school. A lot of similarities over the course of my 41 years as a teacher, a coach, and an athletic director. Share with our listeners quickly, what was an experience that you had at Baylor that while it's happening, you're just kind of scratching your head going, geez, I didn't think that this was going to be part of my job, whatever that job was, that has come back to, be a very important experience at your current job as an athletic director. Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I'm so in my first kind of experience with Baylor athletics, it was right after I finished my internship with the Northern Texas PGA, and I was kind of looking at what I wanted to do next. And it was right when Baylor had a lot of staff changes after their whole football scandal. And so there was a lot of new directors, new people in administration who were looking for extra help. And so they started looking for students. And I got connected through one guy, Andrew Lentz, and he was kind of my first mentor, so to speak. And I remember when he first sat me down, I just remember how naive I was to athletics, especially at the university level. And I thought that I could just kind of disappear in the background and, just kind of get lost in the hundreds of people that work in that athletic administrator position. And I remember how important he stressed to me my image on social media, my image in public. Even though I was just an intern, so to speak, I was still having a light on me because anybody could see me at a game and see the Baylor polo and see my credentials, and anything that I did outside of Baylor or online could have a big effect. And so I remember he pulled up my social media, and all the sports opinions I ever had were right there in front. And he said, "Hey man, people are going to be looking at all of this." And so it was just a reminder for me in my personal walk. You never know where you're going to end up. You never know where you're going to maybe work in the future. And so that really changed my mind that year to become more of an objective sports fan. And what I mean by that is less of rooting for my teams here and there, which I still do, but maybe not as publicly, but also just appreciating the sports for what they are and appreciating all that goes on behind the scenes and not getting caught up in the emotions of the sports. And that's something that I have to do a lot now as an AD. Imagine how it would be if you're at a high school game and you see your athletic director there yelling at the refs every 2 seconds, or going online and talking about how coach should have done this or that, or how this kid missed the game-winning shot and how he should have, all that stuff, is a sign that now I can see a lot of maturity coming from him just giving me the heads up before I got in that job. Like, hey, you need to become a lot more objective and realize that as you work through this, people are going to have their eye on you, no matter how unimportant you feel. And so now it helped me because now I am the guy that people look at games and see how I'm reacting to things. And I had that practice at the university level, which was really helpful. So I'm glad that he kind of sat me down and gave me the heads up. I think you're on mute. There we go.
I am a professional podcaster. We've done over 250 of these, and I still forget to unmute myself. I was trying to say, a tremendously valuable lesson about the importance of knowing that you are the face of that program, and that logo on your shirt, your jacket, whatever identifies you. Very, very good lesson for all of us. For our listeners, we're visiting with Scott Visy. He's a registered athletic administrator, and he's the director of athletics at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. We're going to be back with some more, but let's take a quick break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Huddle for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high schools and colleges. And even professional programs are using Huddle to raise their level of play. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you, or how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We're back visiting with Scott Visy, registered athletic administrator and the athletic director at Delaware Christian School in Ohio. Scott, you mentioned earlier one of your mentors, and in our profession, mentorship and leadership is so important. So share, if you will, maybe that same story or some of the other people that have had an impact on your career so far. None of us gets to where we're at on our own. So who's helped you along the way?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I could talk about. And it was kind of similar when I was interviewing for positions right out of school. some of the interviewers stopped me and were like, man, it seems like you have so much experience, but you're so young. And it's really because I've been able to learn from other people that have poured into me. And so I can speak to just lessons that I've learned from them that I haven't necessarily had to experience yet, or at least in depth that they have. So yeah, I mentioned Andrew Lentz, that was a mentor for me when I was at Baylor. And then I mentioned when I was working at Midway High School in Waco, the athletic director there, Brad Shelton, he was a big mentor for me through grad school. And really, when I just knocked on his door before my second year of grad school, yeah, it was really because he gave me the freedom to learn everything high school athletics. He took me under his wing and just gave me a lot of responsibility. Obviously, football is very big in Texas, and man, he just kind of let me run with some projects and some big things, especially that first COVID year in 2020 of, we're trying to figure this out. So, here's a good opportunity for you to learn, Scott, and just kind of gave me that freedom. And then he also just day to day let me sit in his office, see how he managed workflow, see how he worked with different administrators at the school or administrators at other schools. And like I said, I grew up in a small school, so it was good to see how athletics work at a big school, or a big high school for that matter, and just how to build a successful culture. And especially when you're at a big school, sometimes that can be hard, but how to do it from the top down and how to instill that culture every year through all your coaches, through all your programs. Because especially at a big school, like, you're not seeing every student there day to day like I might at my small school, but he kind of helped me realize how to do that. Another mentor I have currently is our principal at Delaware Christian, Tom Carroll. We share a door to our offices, so we're constantly in communication and just always helping one another out. And he's been doing what he's been doing for, I believe, over 40 years. So really the biggest lessons I've been learning from him are how to build relationships with students and how to build relationships with parents. One of our core values at our school is partnering with parents. And so, that was one thing that coming into this job, I wasn't necessarily ready for or equipped for, or didn't even really see the value in it. And he's been teaching me along the way how important it is to have good relationships with the parents, so that when there are times that you have to walk alongside a student struggling, you already have that trust built with the parent to also help the student and be on the same page with that parent as well. The last person I'd mention is my dad. Not only did he teach me the importance of having mentors, but he's been one to me. He always taught me valuable life lessons like a lot of our parents have, but he still does that today. He was a coach for about 30 years for the sport of basketball. And he was one of my coaches as well. But now in his retirement, he is a referee. And so he's had experience with coaches, administrations at different schools, and now with officials. And so it feels like it's nightly when I'm calling him, asking him either about something that happened in our game that night, or how to handle a situation with a coach or a player, since he's been there too. And he just is so good about speaking wisdom in my life and how to handle those things. But what was most important of all in growing up, what he taught me was how to have passion with everything I do. And that's ultimately how I can get through the mundane days, or get through the challenging days, is remembering that I have a passion for this and where that passion comes from and why I have a passion for what I do. And so just kind of him teaching me that in everything I did growing up is how I'm able to get through most of my days now.
Wow. Really appreciate you sharing that. And shout out to your dad for being an official. I told you I'm also a high school basketball official, so good for him. Scott, we mentioned while we were introducing you that you're currently an RAA, a registered athletic administrator. And I think it's important for our listeners, particularly the young ones, to hear about all of our journeys with our state national organization. So how did you first become aware of the Ohio organization, and how'd you get started with that RAA?
Yeah, so when I was at Midway High School in grad school, and when I was trying to learn everything from our athletic director there's only so much you can learn in a year, and especially a COVID year for that matter. And so I was just hungry for more information, I was passionate about it like I am now, and I just wanted to learn more. And my program at Baylor, as good as it was, a lot of it was tailored more to the professional and collegiate realm. And so there was still a lot I was missing at the high school realm. And so I asked our AD there, like, how did you learn a lot of this? And, some of it came from experience, obviously, but he kind of told me about the NIAAA and all the, at the time it was the Texas level. And so he said, here, get started with this. You can take some classes, you can do all this. And so that summer, especially before school started, I had a lot of time. And so I knocked out my 3 classes required for the RAA right there that summer, and did it all online. It was super easy and super informational. I was taking notes all the time because a lot of this information was just new to me. I know a lot of people enter these classes after being a athletic administrator for a few years, but I didn't have that. So every sentence that was spoken, I was writing down because it was all new to me. And a lot of the resources that I got from those classes, I still use now. And what's really cool is coming into the position I'm in now at Delaware Christian. We're a really small school, and the athletic director role at our school has only been a full-time position for, I think, 7 or 8 years. So, the school's very old, but it was always a part-time position, or athletics were thought of as an afterthought. And then even within those 8 years, we had an AD for a couple years, and then a new one for a couple more years. And then we really didn't have one last year. And so I inherited a program that just had a lot of missing pieces, or didn't have like a solidified handbook, just things that we kind of think of as basic. And I truly believe if I didn't take those classes through the NIAAA, I wouldn't know where to start with making a mission statement, writing a handbook, how to find coaches, all of these things that our school didn't really have a structure for, just because we came off of a year, in a COVID year for that matter, but one without an AD that now I'm stepping into and trying to just create order. And so those classes were really helpful in doing that. And so, moving up to Ohio, I got a membership also to the state level, the OI AAA, and attended my first conference in November, which was just about 30 minutes from me being in Central Ohio. So it was super convenient. And when I was there, it was not only great just finding other ADs and learning from them and networking. I know on your podcast, you guys talk about that a lot, but just talking to vendors and realizing things that we might need for, or later down when we grow, that just having an awareness of all the different vendors that are out there, and then hearing from the speakers as well. It was a really good experience for me. And so we also have a local Central Ohio section that I've been to a few of those meetings, and those are just helpful for, you're emailing ADs all the time, scheduling games, and you don't know what they look like, or, what they are like at all. And so being at those lunches and stuff like that is really great networking, so that I know whenever we're searching for a game, I have now those people's contact, know where they are, know where to find them, and have built those relationships as well. So I love the Central Ohio area and how well these ADs work together. I know you had Joey on a few weeks ago from Marysville. I've shared a lot of emails with him and got to meet him at the conference. And so it's been really great getting involved with the NIAAA and OIAAA.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point about the state and the national organization, is that networking component that just really underscores that we're all in this together. We all have the same challenges, and that, you might be struggling with something that another AD just down the road, or maybe even the next state, is doing great with, or reverse that. They might be struggling with something that you have come up with a great system at your school for. So yeah, that networking is so important. And I wouldn't be doing my job as a former member of the National Certification Committee if I didn't ask, what's your status on earning that CAA? Are you taking those courses?
So I want to start them this next summer when I have a little bit more time, but I also know that I need a couple years more as being a athletic administrator to get those next certification. So I still have a little bit of time, obviously being in my first year. So I knew I could knock out the RAA. So I went ahead and did that. And then hopefully the rest I can get as soon as possible.
All right. Well, good to hear you're working on that. For our listeners, we're visiting with Scott Visy. He's a registered athletic administrator, and he's the athletic director at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. We're going to be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. You know, it's getting harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every single season, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. You've heard me say before that we have a Sideline Interactive video score table in our gym, and it is fantastic. You really need to check them out. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. I promise you, you will be very impressed. We're back visiting with Scott Visy, registered athletic administrator at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. Scott, you have already alluded to, you had tremendous experiences while at Baylor. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. You know, what are some things that, you know, you might have seen at Baylor that you thought, you know, hey, that's pretty cool, that maybe you've tried to implement your own version of at Delaware Christian, or maybe just some things that you've come up on your own that you're particularly proud of? What are some best practices for Delaware Christian School?
Yeah, so thinking about what we do at DCS, it's kind of hard because I listen to a lot of guests that you've had and think about how cool it would be sometimes to be at a big school that has lots of resources, but I'm not. And luckily I grew up in a school that was small, and that also means financially small. And so when I was at Baylor, I learned a lot about, you know, you see Baylor competing at a high level in pretty much every sport. But when you look at it, they're actually not that big of a school. And when I took a finance course in my sport management master's degree, it was taught by somebody who worked in the financial department of Baylor Athletics, and just learning how small in scope it truly was compared to some of your bigger state schools in Texas. And just the overall awareness of how to be, I guess, responsible with the resources you have and utilizing them to the best of your ability was very meaningful to me, and just taught me how to be creative with what we have. Because, you know, at Delaware Christian, we don't have a lot of money, but we do have a lot of people that are passionate and committed to the goal of the school. We have, you know, together we have time that we can put, creativity. But a lot of that starts with me investing in and knowing my community. Obviously, I moved halfway across the country to a new place where I didn't know a soul. And so I'm glad that I took the time this summer before the school year starts to really get to know the families at DCS, find what they're passionate about, or what their experience is. And I learned that we have people who work in the food industry that love to just take on our concessions at games and just run with that. Or people who work in farming who can help with the irrigation problems we have at our baseball field, or all the business owners that are at our school that are looking for new ways to advertise and partner with us in a sponsorship. And that's a mutually beneficial way for our program to get more money, but also them to get recognition in the community. Those kind of things have been really helpful. But I would say the biggest thing for us is just being self-aware and remembering our mission. And I say we as administrators and coaches mainly. writing our handbook this last year was really helpful in just kind of taking a step back, because we have some coaches who have been at our school for 20 years, some around 10 years, and they've been here a long time. But it was a good kind of reset. Me coming in and writing a handbook and creating some order kind of helped us all kind of reset and think about why we're doing this. And now we're able to have check-ins during every season of remembering our mission and everything we do, encouraging balance for student athletes, balancing being a student, having a social life, being a good athlete, those kind of things, but also equipping them to be godly men and women, instilling discipline and teaching life lessons, to act in honor and integrity with all things. And so every day, I talked a little bit before about my passion and enthusiasm, but ultimately it's that enthusiasm and that passion is for that mission. Those things that I just listed right there are our goals. And as I'm writing financial reports, or as I'm emailing and trying to figure out schedules, maybe some of the more mundane day-to-day things, I'm remembering why I'm doing it and remembering our mission. It's the same way the coaches, as they're watching film or they're talking to parents about their kid not getting enough playing time or whatever it might be, as long as they're remembering that mission. And I think we do a very good job at that. That's what keeps us moving forward. And so, talking about our coaches, I love our coaches here. They are the most dedicated coaches I've ever come across, because obviously at a small school, we can't offer to pay them much. And so that really shows their heart to be there and their heart to invest in these kids and the community. I only have a couple coaches at the school who work at the school. Most of them are just parents, or they've been around the community a while, but some don't have any connection to the school. They just love what we're on mission for. And that, like, the way we pour into our kids can be seen in the time that we commit to them. And I think our coaches do a great job at that. They show these young people that they have value. And that's why we do the things that we do. That's why we do the team trips, the team meals, the sleepovers, the off-season camps, the early morning workouts, the late night phone calls when a kid's struggling, all those things. Our coaches just do a great job at showing these kids that they have value at their young age, that we care about them, that we care about their futures. And that's why we want to teach them life lessons through sports. And so ultimately, I wouldn't be able to do half the things I do at DCS if it weren't for the great coaches that I have investing in the kids and teaching me how to invest in them better as well.
Yeah, you really did a great job of articulating the importance of why, the mission, why we do what we do. Just really cool stuff. Scott, we'll do this again at the end of the interview, but if one of the listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm always on my email. My email address is athletic.director@dcschool.org. Or if you want my personal email, that's scottvisy, Visy, @gmail.com. I'm always around that. And that way I can, think about responses, especially as ADs. As you could probably tell in this podcast, I like to talk. So email is probably the best way to get all my thoughts out in one concise, email. So I'm usually good about getting back to those.
All right. Well, appreciate you sharing that. We're going to be back with some more with Scott. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For more ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, or to learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. We're back visiting with Scott Visy, registered athletic administrator at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. Scott, one of our original questions for the podcast as we go beyond our 250th episode revolves around this idea of an athletic director being socially aware for their community. So my question is, how can an AD do a better job of being socially aware for all of the stakeholders in their community?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I know you've asked a lot of people that on your podcast before. So some of my answers may, um, I guess, repeat some of the stuff that your other guests have said, but I think that only shows the importance of those things. And so I think the first thing is being available. I know that just by being at a small school that I can be available not only to my coaches, but I can be available to the students. I can get to know them very well. I can be available to the parents, to the staff, and I can get to know people. I mean, I shared earlier in this podcast of just knowing who I can delegate things to, just for being available and knowing my community. But there's just a lot of, I think that's the first step in building trust, right? And trust is important as a leader. And so I think just being available and being there to listen to people who may have ideas, who may have problems, who may have critiques. And so that's kind of the next point of being open to ideas. That doesn't mean listening and doing all of them that you hear, but being open and just listening. You know, I know that I'm young and that I don't have tons of experience. And so I kind of have to lean on a lot of ideas coming from coaches who have been doing it a long time. I'm also self-aware that there is a culture here at Delaware Christian that has been around for decades, even before I was alive. And I came from Texas, before that Maryland. I'm still in my first year in Ohio. You know, everywhere you go is going to have a different culture. And sometimes there are things that you can change about that culture to be more positive, but there's some things in that culture that's just different, and that's okay. You know, obviously everything we do in Texas the past few years is going to be very different than what I'm doing up in Ohio, just based on what the community has interest in, what the community is passionate about, what the community is good at, and what your school is good at, all of those things as well. And so, you know, I spoke about my mentors earlier. I was so thankful that each one of them kind of told me before I took this position, hey, your first year there should be a lot of evaluation and a lot of just sitting back and observing. And then you can have a good mind of what needs to be changed. Because there's some things that you might want to change initially, but then you might realize after some time that, hey, that thing's not that bad after all. That's just part of their culture, and that's good here. You know, so being socially aware is also just not thinking that my way is the best way. And that's something that I struggle with a lot. And so just having that kind of reiterated over time from other mentors was really helpful, because there's so much at Delaware Christian that's beautiful, that was new to me. Different things about their culture and the people there that I just wasn't accustomed to, that I love that they have, you know? And so the last thing I would say is always searching for feedback. When we finished our fall sports, for example, I sent out surveys just to kind of get a feel of how people were thinking the game day operations were. Obviously, we're coming off of kind of 2 years of COVID, at least in Ohio. We haven't had a lot of fans at games since 2019. And so it's a good year for all of us to be reevaluating how our game day operations are going now that gyms are starting to get packed again. Kids are starting to get more comfortable with being in a tight-knit environment. You know, can we look and see, hey, after a few years break of this, everyone's mind is going to be fresh and new to it. Let's ask the questions. Let's ask our coaches, our parents, our staff, our fans, our officials, everybody. Let's see what they think of what we're doing. And obviously there's going to be people who complain, and that goes back to the whole be there to listen, but then discern what the good feedback is from the bad feedback. If people are just complaining because they want to complain, or if there's something valid. Because if you see a lot of people kind of saying the same few things, maybe it's something to have an eye for. So yeah, just being open, being available, being aware of the culture around you, that it might be different, especially when you're in a new environment, and then searching for feedback. Those have been big for me, and just kind of adapting to new culture here in Ohio and at Delaware Christian. So those are the few things that I thought of.
No, it's all very good stuff. And even if it is, one or two was mentioned before, they're great reinforcers. Particularly love, your suggestion about getting the feedback, listening to those constituents, especially when you come in new to a place. This has been really, really cool, getting to hear about your program and finding out more about you, Scott. But we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with the Athletic Director's Toolbox, which is sponsored by Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. So when we come back, we're going to find out what is going to go into Scott Visy's Athletic Director Toolbox. And it's kind of interesting. He's not a complete rookie to the world of athletics, but he is, a first-year athletic director. So I'm curious to find out what's going to go into his Athletic Director Toolbox. Please stay with us. We're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect some comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic department. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also puts you in touch with the usually 95% of the parents and the players who really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to check the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out on some important information. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. All right, we're back with Scott Visy, Registered Athletic Administrator. Scott, it's been great getting to know you, but now we're going to put you on the spot. What 3 tools would you put in to a brand new athletic director's toolbox? What do you got for us?
The first one is one that I don't know how many of us think of it. We always think about having our school's mission and trying to formulate what that might look like. So my first one is having a personal mission. I think that's just as important as ADs. So I spoke earlier about how I was a big basketball guy growing up, still am, and I've coached a little bit. And one of my favorite coaches to read about is John Wooden. And obviously he has his pyramid of success. And at the cornerstones, you have enthusiasm and you have industriousness, or hard work, so to speak. And reading his book, obviously, I think we can all agree that those two things are very foundational in having success, personally and as an organization. But both of those are most easily attained when you have a mission. Obviously, you'll be passionate about your mission because it's your mission, and you'll want to work hard toward it. And focusing on that will keep you the motivation to keep going. Kind of like I was talking about before, just reminding myself why I have enthusiasm for this is what gets me through the day-to-day or the off season or the quote boring parts of the job or the challenging parts of the job, is remembering that personal mission. And so that's been very important for me. Number 2 comes from another basketball coach that I love. My dad went to NC State and graduated right before they won their national championship in '83. And so he always showed me videos growing up of Jim Valvano speaking. And I even have a leadership course at Delaware Christian with some of the high school students, and I'm always showing them Jimmy V clips. And just one thing that I've learned from him is he lives with such a great balance in his life. And one thing that he says quite frequently is that you need to realize where you came from, where you are now, and where you want to be. looking at what you came from or where you came from, it will help ground you in reality, but it'll also help you learn from mistakes or failures, and also remember the highlights and glean from what you did right. Looking at where you are now helps you be present and live in the moment and just have such joy in life. If you're always looking in the past, you might be living in regret. Or if you're always looking to the future, you might just always be one step ahead and can't appreciate what's happening now. So that's also important too. But then lastly, looking at where you want to be. He uses the story of when he was at NC State, the first practice, I think he said every year, but especially their title year, the first practice, what they would do is they would go up and practice cutting down the nets, just to kind of visualize what it would look like if they were to win the championship, and that joy, and they would celebrate like they've already done it. And it's just kind of that image of you should know where you want to be. And that first step in attaining greatness is dreaming of where you want to be as an organization, but in this instance, personally. And so my last one I would say is, don't do it alone. Don't do your job alone. Kind of like things we've been talking about. Network with other athletic directors. I mean, I was new to this area. I wouldn't have known a thing about just the culture around here of sports, what are best practices as an AD in this state that are totally different than Texas and Maryland, where I came before, but also learning how to delegate. There's only so much you can do, especially me at a small school. There's a lot to be done, but only one person to kind of do it. And so learning how to delegate to coaches, to parents, even to students, finding ways they can get involved and get them good experience. And lastly, the part of don't do it alone is on your investment. Invest in the students and invest in the parents, invest in the staff. Make yourself available to them, especially at the high school level. I'm aware that our school probably isn't going to be playing for state championships anytime soon. I'm aware that our school isn't going to be pumping out D1 recruits left and right. But what I know that I can do in my time here, and these kids in their short time in the school there, I can make them realize things in themselves so they can learn from experiences that I've had and help them to become better people, better citizens, better contributors to society, all these things. And so finding the time to do that, we had a basketball trip right before the season with the boys, and we only have 3 coaches, and we have 18 boys in our program for JV and varsity. And so they needed another chaperone. And instead of asking a parent, I asked if I could go, especially early in the school year. Like, I want to be a part of these kids' lives. I want them to be able to come to me when they need advice, or when they're struggling with something, or teaching them just life lessons. That's why I do what I do. I'm not here to pump out D1 recruits or necessarily win state championships. I'm here for the kids. And so at least personally, that ties back to my personal mission. And I know that I can't do it alone. And so it would be also selfish of me to not invest back into those students and those parents and the other staff. So those are my 3 that have really helped me, and hopefully they can help somebody else too.
Oh, wow. I really appreciate you sharing it, and great stuff. Always love the Jimmy V stuff, tremendous, motivational stuff just from the coaching, as well as, obviously later in his life. And of course, you can never go wrong with John Wooden. Okay. Very good stuff. Scott, I know you did this earlier, but if one of our listeners wants to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, feel free to shoot me an email, athletic.director@dcschool.org, or a personal email is scottvisy@gmail.com. I'm also on pretty much every social media platform. I'm a millennial, so I'm the only Scott Visy that exists in the world. So if you search me, you'll probably find me. Last name is spelled Visy. So you can search for me, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm all there, always willing to network with other ADs and learn from you guys, and have you guys ask questions if you have questions as well.
Scott Visy, registered athletic administrator and AD at Delaware Christian School in Delaware, Ohio. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks, Jake. It's been a pleasure.
For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. And before we go, we want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your athletic department by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing.